this is okay. Yes, this is okay. There are two, good morning, two main epics in India. One is the Ramayana and the second is Mahabharata. Now Ramayana came into existence nearly 7,000 plus years ago. As various historians say that Valmiki lived around 5000 BC. So the dates, today we are not discussing the dates, but roughly historians have concluded that Bhagavad Gita took place around 5000 years ago and Ramayana around 7000 plus years ago. So that is rough, but some say it was 2500 or 3000. It doesn't make a difference. How ancient these texts are is not very important. But what is contained therein, I think we need to focus on. So the first Ramayana was written by Adi Kavi Valmiki. Adi Kavi means the first poet. And in fact, the first stanza of the poem he wrote was the first ever stanza that was ever written in a metric form. And using that meter, he created 24,000 verses. Subsequently, there were different Ramayanas. Now, Ramayana basically is the journey of Ram. Ram plus Ayana. Ayana is the journey. The limiting factor for the Valmiki Ramayana was that it was written in Sanskrit. And it was therefore limited to a small group of Sanskrit scholars. I believe that a few thousand people were fluent in Sanskrit those days. But it was like, 100 years ago, English was limited to, say, a few million people in India. Majority spoke vernaculars. Then came Tulsi in 15th century AD. So he is quite recent, about 600 years ago. And he was a great devotee of Lord Ram. He wanted to again compose something in Sanskrit, but he will compose a few verses during the day, and overnight the verses will disappear. So he was naturally quite perturbed. And in his dream, Lord Shiva appeared and he said, "Son, don't bother about writing in Sanskrit. You must write in the vernacular, the local language. Because what you have to do is you have to write a Ramayana for the masses and not the elite classes." So he started writing in Avadi. Now when he started writing in Avadi, which was the local language, there was a great opposition by the Pandits, because they thought that he was trying to pollute the whole thing and moving away from the language of gods. Sanskrit was known as the language of gods. So, but he persisted. And there were many people who criticized him and attacked him. So, Tulsi, while he was focused on his great works, he had a great desire, like most devotees, that he wanted to have a darshan of Lord Ram. Now, darshan is something which you read about and people talk about, but rarely do people have the real darshan. So once in his dream, Lord Hanuman appeared, and he said that move out of Kashi and go to Chitrakoot. Chitrakoot is where you will see Rama. So he goes there, starts composing in Chitrakoot. Most of the Ramayana was, I believe, was written there. And one day, in his samadhi, or during his meditation, so he spent several years meditating. He saw two princes following a deer, and he tells Hanumanji, he said, I saw these two. He is communicating at a higher plane with Lord Hanuman, and he says, I saw these two princes on horses, riding horses, and they are following a deer. So Hanumanji says that, oh, you saw Ram and Lakshman, and you did not recognize them. That what you were seeing were Ram and Lakshman. So he said, next time when they are coming, I'll just alert you that Ram and Lakshman are there. So again, he is busy in in his meditation, and he is making the sandalwood paste as his normal thing. So two young boys come, very good looking, and they ask Tulsi, Baba, give us sandalwood paste. Baba, Chandan do. Now, again he is clueless, but he is seeing God and he doesn't recognize. So Lord Hanuman, who was there disguised as a devotee, he just tips him off. He says, and there is a beautiful verse, Chitrakoot ke ghat par, bhai santan ki bhi, that in Chitrakoot there is a lot of rush of saints. Tulsi Das Chandan Gise. Tulsi is preparing the sandal paste. Tilak de Tiragudira. He is preparing the sandal paste to give a tilak to Lord Ram. Then he suddenly realizes that he says, yes, Hanumanji is telling me that Lord Ram is there and you must do the tilak. So he sees, and historians say that as soon as he saw Ram and Lakshman, he went into a trance and he forgot where he was. He lost track of his surroundings. So Ram himself took the paste and put it on his forehead. Himself took it, went away. And Tulsi was for a pretty long time. He was in ecstasy. He was completely lost. And he was transported to some higher plane through that experience. And it is said that that is when he could visualize the entire Ram Leela. Whatever Ram did, he could actually see what was happening. So this is about Tulsi's mystic vision, that how saints can have a vision which normal people cannot have. But this story tells us that again you need somebody's help now. Where there is talk of Ram and Lakshman, there is always talk of Hanuman. So Hanumanji is always like the, is the gatekeeper. So once there is a famous story that somebody asked Ram that why do you have Sugriv as a good friend? Sugriv was a monkey king, and Sugriv was not a very high character. He had promised to look for Sita, but as soon as he got the kingdom, he got into debauchery and drinking and enjoying life, and he completely forgot that he had promised that he'll look for Sita. So Ram said, yeah, I know that he has character flaws and he has so many problems, but what do I do? Hanuman brought him to me, and whoever Hanuman brings to me, I just accept. So that is why you see more temples of Lord Hanuman today than of Ram, because Hanumanji is the gatekeeper and he controls the access to Rama. So this was the first vision that Tulsi has described. The second vision that Tulsi had is when Tulsi was in Ayodhya. So Tulsi spent a lot of time in Ayodhya, spent time in Kashi, Chitrakoot and other places. Now near Ayodhya there is a river called Saryu river. So Tulsi composed a verse saying that Sakha Sahit Raghuvansh Vihare Saryu Tir. Sakha Sahit Saryu Tir Vihare Raghuvansh. That Lord Ram with his friends is walking along the river Saryu. Tulsi Das Harash Nirakhi Charan Raj Pai. Tulsi gets into ecstasy and picks up the raj, the sand from under the feet. Wherever the footmarks were left by the Lord, he collects the sand and he puts it on his forehead. Now many people may say, if you do a scientific evaluation, that Rama was a contemporary. Actually, he was a contemporary of Valmiki.
Is it contemporary
of Valmiki?
Okay, some say that.
The Valmiki, the Adi Kavi who composed the Ramayana. Tulsi came 6,000-7,000 years later. But Tulsi is describing the Ramayana and saying that I am seeing the Leela in front of me. Now in the autobiography of the yogi, that Paramahansa describes that there is a city and palace and beautiful things, and so things that get created, but which do not conform to physical laws. If you apply physical laws, then those things cannot exist. But at the spiritual plane, there is an existence. So these have to be, whatever Tulsi says, has to be viewed in terms of his spiritual vision. That there is a physical vision, and then there is the vision through the third eye, like Arjuna had his vision in chapter 11 of the Gita. Now, there is a talk when you read about Tulsi of a few miracles in his life. Like for, say, Mother Teresa, you have to establish and prove miracles before any enlightened soul is accepted as a saint. Now, one famous miracle was performed by Tulsi when he visited Mathura, when he visited Vrindavan. Now, Tulsi wanted to visit the famous Krishna temple. Now, the Mahant, the priest over there, he taunted Tulsi Because there is a rivalry among, saints also, the rivalry. So he said, Tulsi, how can you go inside the Krishna temple? Because you are a devotee of Ram. And if you are a devotee of one person, then you can't go to the temple of another person. So Tulsi said that yes, is a very valid point. So Tulsi composed 2 verses. In the first verse he says, outside the temple, कहा कहूँ छवि आपकी भले बने हो नाथ, तुलसी मस्तक तब नवे धरो धनुष सर. So he said, Lord Krishna, I very much want to come and have your darshan, but on one condition, that you transform yourself as Lord Ram. And just to prove his own devotion. And then, within minutes, he composes another verse, that Murli Mukut Durai ke Nath Bhayo Raghu. That concealing his flute and the crown, Krishna transforms himself as Lord Ram. तब तुलसी कर जोर के प्रमुदित नायो माँ. And at that point, Tulsi is in bliss, and he, with his folded hands, he bows to Lord Krishna. Now, this is one miracle that was performed. The second miracle is described by not Tulsi, because Tulsi used to talk very little about himself. This is one quality of saints, they don't talk about themselves, their own powers. Tulsi was a contemporary of Emperor Akbar. So, in Akbar's court, there were 9 Ratnas, 9 elevated, 9 celebrated advisors. One of them was Todarmal. So Todarmal said that Tulsi can do miracles. So Akbar said, please call Tulsi to his court and says, please perform a miracle. Tulsi said, I am just a devotee. I do no miracles. Miracles are done by Ram, not done by Tulsi. Tulsi is a humble devotee. So I was telling that Akbar summons Tulsi, the emperor, and says, you have to perform a miracle. So Tulsi says, I am a humble devotee, I know no miracles. If there are any miracles done by Lord Ram, I know nothing. So Akbar is not happy. He says, put him in prison until he shows a miracle. So they tie him up, put him behind bars. So he remembers, he meditates on Lord Hanuman. And next day, the palace and the entire Fatehpur Sikri, Akbar used to be in Fatehpur Sikri, was attacked by monkeys. And they started attacking people and tearing clothes and buildings, and they created havoc. That is when somebody told Akbar that, Akbar, if you want peace, you liberate Tulsi, because this is his miracle. So he calls him, he apologizes, he says, sorry, I made a mistake, now please stop this kind of terror and ceases. So the Tulsi had that power, which some say that the power he had, he put in his words, whatever he wrote had such power that he is able to move for centuries hundreds of million people. Now in North India, at least 2, 3, 400 million people have Tulsi Ramayana at their homes. And so the Tulsi started this practice of Ram Leelas, 9 days of Ram Leelas during Navaratras and so on. So Tulsi's power came from his single-minded devotion. And he composed a verse in Dohavali, which is called Ek Bharoso, Ek Bal, Ek Aas Vishwas, that I have one faith, one source of strength, one God, and one focus of devotion. That there is only one, nothing else. Now let's look at the actual Tulsi Ramayana. Tulsi Ramayana has 4 levels of dialogue. These are called the point 1, 4 Samvad. The first is the dialogue between Lord Shiva and Goddess Parvati. That Shiva is narrating the Ramayana to Parvati. The second is between the divine crow, Kag Basundi, and the royal bird called Garu. So it's between 2 birds. The second is between 2 birds. Now crow this famous crow, Kag Basundi, learned the Ramayana from Lord Shiva himself directly. And the third level is between 2 saints, Saint Yagvalik telling the Ramayana to Rishi Bharadwaj. Yagvalik and Bharadwaj. And the 4th level, the 4th stream of Ramayana is Tulsi and the readers. Now in Tulsi Ramayana, these 4 streams are flowing in harmony. Most of the say that wisdom is conveyed by Lord Shiva. Whatever he says is of exceptional nature, and the verses attributed to Shiva are out of this world. Then the second is Kag Basundi, the crow, and he is talking about devotion. The third, where the 2 saints are talking, they talk about all the action. And Tulsi, he is employing all the 3 and plus his katha. So there is a Ram katha. Now basically, in Ramayana there are 3, it's a tale of 3 cities. The first one is Ayodhya, where Rama is born. Ayodhya's literary meaning is Ayodhya, Yudh, where there is no Yudh, no fighting. So it's the city of peace. The second city is Janakpuri, the 3 prominent cities. Janakpuri is where Sita is born. It is also called Videhpur or Videhpuri. Videhpuri actually means that where people do not have body identification but they have soul identification. And the third city is the golden city of Lanka, where Ravan ruled. So the first city represents eternal peace. Ayodhya represents eternal peace. Janakpuri represents divinity, where people are aware of their Atma, soul. And Lanka, which is of gold, it is the city of Maya, represents Maya or illusion. Now, Ayodhya and Janakpuri, they are in union. Ram and Sita get married, but it is the Maya of Lanka which is the cause of sorrow and grief. So this is the broad things. Now Tulsi says in one verse that there are millions of Ramayana. रामचंद्र के चरित सुहाए कोटि कलप लगी काहू न गाए. That the stories of the deeds of Ram cannot be described in many yugas, because there are Hari Anant, Hari Katha Ananta, that gods are infinite and God's Leela, God's story is infinite. Gavai sunahi bahuri vidhi santa. And saints sing the tale of Rama in millions of different ways. So now, how is it possible? Like if you look at the Ramayanas, the famous ones, I'll tell you. The Valmiki Ramayana is the most famous or number one poem. Then you have Kamban Ramayana. Kamban was a rishi in Tamil Nadu, so it is in Tamil. Then there is Tulsi Ramayana. Then Ramayanas written by various saints. Not more than 100 Ramayanas, or if you stretch, maybe a few hundred, maybe 1,000 Ramayanas. But how come Tulsi says that there are millions? Now, the interpretation given is that Tulsi is saying that since Ram resides in human heart, in everybody's heart, so there is a Ramayana which pertains to every human being. Now, how you perceive Ram and his deeds is actually your Ramayana. Because if you compare, say, Valmiki Ramayana versus Tulsi Ramayana, it is not a translation of Sanskrit like many simplistic scholars say. He translated Sanskrit into, say, Avadi, local language. No. There are so many differences of style, of substance. So he is referring to an individual's vision, individual's view, how you view your own story. So your own story is your own Ramayana. So that is the reference to the millions of Ramayana. Now these I have already talked about Tulsi's vision at Saryu and Chitrakoot. And he meets with Hanumanji and Lord Shiva. He has the darshan of Shiva. Now, in the Balkani, the first chapter, Tulsi talks about the power of Maya or illusion. And the power of Maya is also the cause of God's reincarnation as human being. That how can God, why does God have to incarnate in human form? Now, the three stories which are there. One is the story of Sati. Sati was the consort and spouse of Lord Shiva. And once while moving out in the forest, they see Ram and Lakshman. Ram is crying and lamenting, because Sita had been abducted by Rama, and Ram is very miserable. He's crying like a human being. And Shiva, he does with folded hands he does pranam to Ramchandraji, and Sati, she is intrigued. Even though Sati is she is of divine origin, she is like mother goddess, but she has this illusion, and she asks Shiva, who is this? So Shiva says that this is they are the two princes of Maharaja Dashrath, and Ram's wife was abducted by the demon king, and so she asked, if he is a prince, how can he be Brahm? And if he is Brahm, how can he cry like this, like a normal human being? So Lord Shiva says, so Shiva was perturbed, because he says that it's not good to doubt, to lose your faith. Then he says, why don't you find out yourself? You can do your own pariksha. You can find out whether he is God or whether he is just a human being. But then Shiva says, is one of the beautiful verses of Ramayana. होवै सोही जो राम रचिरा को करी तर्क बढ़ावे सका. That whatever happens is what Ram has already decided. No point arguing about what has happened, why it has happened, why it's happened. But he's worried. In his heart, he's worried that if Sati goes to take a test of Lord Ram, he's into trouble. So what Sati does, that she transforms herself as Sita, and so Ram and Lakshman are looking for Sita, and so behind every tree and every creeper they are looking, and suddenly Sati appeared as Sita. So if you look the spelling also, it's quite close now. Satisita, Sati becomes Sita. And even Lakshman for a moment got confused. But Ram says, Pranam, how is your husband Shiva doing? So then Sati realizes that she made a big blunder by acquiring the form and trying to deceive Brahma, deceive God himself. And then suddenly the veil of illusion disappears, and she is in great agony, and she says that I made a big mistake by trying to do this, and she is rushing towards Lord Shiva. She wants to go back, and then wherever she goes, she looks at Ram. Ram is visible everywhere. She sees Ram, Lakshman, Sita, and she is totally confused. And then she goes back to Shiva, and Shiva asks, what did you do? Did you take the test? And she lies to him. She says, oh, I did nothing. I just did pranam. And but through his third eye, Shiva realized that she kind of. So she says, now having Sati has transformed herself as the mother goddess, consort of Ram, now I cannot be with her in this life. So mentally he renounces her and goes into deep samadhi for several hundred years. Now when he wakes up from the samadhi, the Ramayana describes that Sati's father was doing a big yagna and ceremony at home, and Sati and Shiva had not been invited because of Sati's father Daksh had some grievance against Lord Shiva. So Sati says, tells Shiva that if you allow me, I want to go and visit my parents. So Shiva says that, look, it's not a good thing to go without an invitation, even though it's your parents' house. But you go, there is no problem. Now Tulsi has again a very beautiful verse. Says that Jadapi Mitra Prabhu Guru Geha Jaiye bin Boleu न संदेह. यद्यपि मित्र प्रभु पितु गुरु गेहा जाइए बिन बोलेउ न संदेहा. That you can go to the house of a friend, a master, father and guru without an invitation. However, तदपि बैर जहाँ माने ही कोई तहाँ गए कल्याण न हुए. Even if, but if even among these four, if somebody harbors animosity against you, then going there is not advisable. It's a wonderful message where Shiva says, you go to your father's home, please go, I will not stop you, but I am not comfortable because there was a quarrel between father-in-law and son-in-law. So she goes there, and then there is again she is insulted, and she jumps into that sacrificial fire and reborn as Parvati. As Parvati, she does tapasya for hundreds of years, and then she is able to marry Shiva. Now, in the earlier verse, where it says that Hovai soi jo Ram rachiraka, that whatever Ram has decided, that will prevail, that destiny will prevail. But here, Tulsi says that when Sati was young, and Narad comes, and Narad says that, looks at her hand and says that she is going to marry Shiva. But Shiva had taken the vow of celibacy. So she starts her tapasya, and the 7 rishis came, 7 saints came, and they tell her that through tapasya, through meditation, through prayer, you can change your own destiny. So destiny can't be changed by normal people through normal means, but through prayer, through meditation and tap, destiny can be changed. So the marriage takes place. So in the Balkand, the first chapter, you have one famous birth and 2 famous marriages. So one is the marriage of Lord Shiva, birth of Ram. Then Tulsi talks about the birth of Ram. And then the first chapter ends with the marriage of Ram and Sita. There is a beautiful description of the marriage, that how when Lord Shiva comes, in his Barat, the marriage procession, there were all the because he used to live in a funeral ground, and he used to have ashes on the body, and only the animals and all kinds of characters were this thing. And so Mena, the mother of Parvati, she was worried and she didn't want to marry them. But finally, Narad comes and explains that your daughter is the mother goddess, and Shiva is the divine, the divinity himself. And he describes the previous life, that in the previous life itself they were married, so the marriage takes place. Now Tulsi gives various causes for the birth of Lord Ram, that Ram's birth. That how does it happen? One example he gives, that in extreme cold, water gets frozen. In the lake, water gets frozen. We have snow, mountains overnight get covered with snow, and so on. So Tulsi says that Agunai Sagunai Nahi Kachu Bheda, that between Agun and Sagun, God with form and without form, they are all the same form of one Brahm. That Brahm is one, appears to us as Nirgun and Sagun, formless and with form. Now in Balkand, Tulsi says that it is true that one Brahm, the formless, acquires form, and then there is a name, but he says, interestingly, that name is more important than the form itself. That Ram Nam, the name of Lord Ram, is more important than Rama himself. Because that if you look at the holy deeds of Lord Rama, he destroyed maybe a few hundred demons or maybe 1,000 demons, destroyed Lanka, and established the rule of Dharma. Basically, the story of Ramayana is for establishment of the rule of Dharma. But he says while Ram's scope of action is limited in time and space, but Ram Nam, the name of Rama, goes beyond time and space. That his name will inspire millions and millions of people and forever. And on that he composed several verses. They call these chaupais and dohas, the quatrains and verses. And one famous one is Ram Nam. Somebody asked Tulsi that what is the procedure for taking Ram's Nam? There is a procedure, like in meditation, you sit straight and back has to be straight and this, that and everything. There is a position which they teach here. So Tulsi said it's very simple. Ram Nam kahi je jamu hai, tinai ne paap punj samhai. He says, even if you yawn and say Ram, the sins will not enter your body. This is very simple. He says it is nothing. So that is why you find that the appeal of Tulsi Ramayana, it cuts across different social stratum. So simple. Like in Gita, Krishna says, Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam, that somebody asks Krishna that how do I worship you? what should I offer you? So Krishna says, Patram, Pushpam, Phalam, Toya. You can offer me a flower, a leaf, a fruit, sweet, not even sweet, and maybe a little water. And I accept happily, provided it is offered with devotion. Here Tulsi says that you need nothing, even if you are yawning and you say that, otherwise normally Pandits will say that, clean the place and tidy up everything. He says, wherever, whenever you are, just just say Ram. And he will take care of all your sorrows and pain and sufferings and obstacles and rid you of all the sins. So Tulsi says that जब जब होई धर्म के हानि, that when righteousness diminishes, बाढ़े असुर अधम अभिमानी, and the number of unrighteous people increases, तब तब धरे हरि मनुज शरीरा हरे कृपा निधि सज्जन पीरा. That on such occasions, Lord incarnates in human forms to take care of the saints and eliminate the evildoers. Same message was subsequently given. So this was Treta Yuga. In Dwapar, Krishna says the same thing. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanirvavati bharate. When there is the dharma diminishes, adharma increases, then Lord comes. The same stories. Now, this was happening in Ayodhya, that Ram is born in Ayodhya. Then there are one king who was praying for a son who was issueless. Like, okay, let's come to the story of Dashrath. Dashrath was getting old. He had no offspring. So he wants to have a child, and he married thrice, but still no luck. So finally they do a yajna, and they seek, pray to Vishnu and seek a son like Vishnu. Now God has his problem. If the devotee says, I want a son like you, now the Vishnu was in a quandary. He said, where do I look for someone like me? So Tulsi says that Bhagwan Vishnu actually appeared. So Tulsi is, when he is composing Ramayana, he says, Bhai Prakat Kirpala Deen Dayan. That Lord appears himself. When the time of birth came, then Lord appears. So he manifests himself. And so Lord appears. But this is not incarnation. That Vishnu says, okay, I am here as your son. So Kaushalya, the mother, Dashrath's spouse, says that, look, you are too big, you have to become a child. So Vishnu becomes a child. So Kaushalya says that you become a child, but now you have to start crying, because you have to cry first, because when you are a god, you don't have to cry. So he starts crying, and that is how Tulsi describes beautifully the birth of Lord Rama, that when he first appears as Vishnu himself, and then starts crying as a child, and then the birth of Rama is announced to everybody. That is how the birth is taking place. And then Balkand says that how Rama goes to school, and that is Guru. That Guru teaches him, and within a few months, maybe a year or two, he is able to acquire the knowledge of all the Vedas and Upanishads and everything, because he is the personification of wisdom himself. But in order to conform to the physical laws, even the Brahm has to go to school and get knowledge. And then finally, when they grow up, maybe they were 15, 16 years, and the time for the Leela starts. And then there is a story of Valmiki. The Rishi Vishwamitra who comes. And Vishwamitra used to do a lot of yagnas, and which were destroyed, desecrated by asuras, the demons. So Vishwamitra comes to the court of Dashrath and says, I want Ram and Lakshman to go with me. After a lot of hesitation, Dashrath says, you please take me along. Why do you want my sons who are very young, don't know much about warfare and this? So he said, please don't underestimate them. Send them to protect my yajna. Then Ram goes, and that is where the true Leela starts, when he steps out of the house. And the first thing that he does is Ahilya Udhar. That Ahilya is in the form of a stone, and he touches the stone, and stone turns into a woman. And then it was Vishwamitra who teaches Ram and Lakshman the various mantras and martial arts. And one of the mantras they were taught was to ensure that they could remain without food for several days and without water for several weeks. So such mantras were taught, and he also gave them some divine astras, divine weapons. Now, on the way, as they are going, they come across Tadka and other demons, and Ram is able to destroy them all, kill them all. They spend a few days with Vishwamitra, and then Vishwamitra receives an invitation from Raja Janak, father of goddess Sita, who was holding a swayamvar for the marriage of Sita, and he was inviting various saints. So he invites Vishwamitra also. As the destiny will have it, Vishwamitra says that these two young boys are also with me, I'll come with them. So he says, okay, more the merrier. So he says, please come. Now, even though Ram knows everything, but they are in conformity with the Leela, they say, chalo chalte, let's go. And so they ask, where are we going? So we are going to attend this swayamvar, the marriage of swayamvar is actually the selection of spouse, not the marriage. So they go there. Now, before the swayamvar, Ram meets Sita in a garden. There is a royal garden, and Vishwamitra, early morning, Vishwamitra used to get up, and he asked Ram and Lakshman, why don't you go and collect some flowers for my prayer? So like two obedient boys, they go to the nearby royal Vatika, the garden. Now there was one rule which was obeyed those days, that scriptures say that only those flowers were collected that had fallen on the ground. So even today, the enlightened souls don't pluck flowers, but those, say, if the wind comes, some will fall on the ground. So they say, so the term used is that they collected flowers which were already fallen down. So they collect flowers. And there Sita is coming parallelly to worship goddess Parvati. So there is a temple and Sita used to go there, and she is going there to pray for her welfare or whatever. Now as Sita prays, the garland from the neck of the goddess falls on the ground as a sign of blessing. So they take again something that has fallen, so she takes it as a blessing. And then there is this voice from the sky, the Akashvani, and Tulsi has beautifully described it. Tulsi says, सुनी सिय सत्य असीस हमारी, पूजहि मन कामना तुम्हारी, नारद वचन सदा सुचि साचा, सोबर मिलहि जाई मन राजा. Some scholar says that this is one of the most auspicious verses of the entire Ramayana, where goddess Parvati says that, O Sita, whatever you have desired in your heart will be fulfilled. So, var milahi jahi man raja. That the var has two meanings. One is husband, but also var is like your desire. So all your desires will be fulfilled. This is my blessing. And because again the legend has it that Narad had conveyed to Janak that Sita was so fortunate, and so she had such good fortune that she will be marrying someone who is of great merit. So this blessing is given. Now Ram and Sita meet, and of course Ram is described as a Maryada Purushottam. So there is no direct dialogue, but they look at each other, and then Sita, they say that she goes here and there to collect some flowers, and they meet again. They look at each other again. So Ram and Lakshman, they spent a little extra time in the garden, apparently because Sita was there. So Sita and her Sakhis, the other ladies were there with her. So they are hanging around and they're just looking. Now maybe half an hour passed or 1 hour passed, or I don't know. But suddenly Ram is worried that we are getting late, and Vishwamitra will be waiting for us. So Tulsi says that even the fear is afraid of Ram. Ram is so powerful that he knows no fear. Even the fear is afraid of Ram, but look at the power of the saint's love, that Ram is worried that the saint will get him. And when Ram and Lakshman are going in this Pushpa Vatika, that Tulsi says, Syam Gaur Kim Kaho Bakhani, Gira Anen Nain Binubani. Beautiful line. That one is Shyam. Ram is a dark complexion and Lakshman is a fair complexion. how do I describe the beauty of these two brothers, one dark and one fair skinned? Gira anan, my tongue has no eyes, tongue cannot see, and eyes cannot speak. Now, this kind of expression he composed, say, 500-600 years ago. But you look at the poetry in different languages, different countries, such beauty and such a purity of expression, very very rare. And Tulsi wrote something like 11,000 lines of such magical purity and precision, and within, I think, something like 2 years, 7 months, 26 days. Started with the day the Ram was born, and 2.5 years later he ended on the day when Ram and Sita got married. So that was 2.5 years, and a huge thing. Anyways, so next day they go for Swambar, and now you will notice something very strange, that is a constant mention of Shiva and Parvati. So Sita is a worshipper of Parvati, and next day when they go for the Swambar, Janak had taken the vow that whoever breaks the bow of Shiva will marry Sita. Now, if you worship Shiva, how can you say that anybody comes? So this it's another. I think if we had more time, we could discuss it. So between the various gods also, this kind of thing is always there. But then the scholars say that this vow was taken because Janak was sure that except Lord Vishnu, nobody will be able to do it. And he did not break it, it broke on its own. Because they say that the bow represents ego, and when Ram lifted the bow, the ego collapsed itself. So there are esoteric explanations that how, some people may ask this question. On the one hand, you worship, another hand you say, I have to break your weapon. So this marriage and the arrival of Parshuram, who gets very, very angry.
Who is very?
Very angry, because he was again a devotee of Shiva, and he says that whoever has broken the Shiv Dhanush is my enemy. And that's again a beautiful passage where he has a long argument with Lakshman. And so Lakshman says that this Pinak, the name of the Shiva's Dhanush was Pinak. He says Rama only touched it and it broke because it was too old. So Parshuram says, don't call it a mere, ordinary bow, ordinary Dhanush. It is, the mighty Pinak of Lord Shiva. And then finally, he starts showing his anger towards Ram, and Ram says that, look, we don't want to fight with you. I am a very humble prince. I have a very small name, Ram, and you are such a celebrated warrior. Your name is Parshuram. You are much bigger than me. So he says, if you think you are so good and you are so powerful, take this bow of Lord Vishnu and string it. So Ram looks at the bow, and automatically the bow comes to him. And scholars say that it was his own weapon which comes to the master. Because Ram, being the incarnation, Rama Ramapati, Ram Ramapati Kardhan Levu, Khenchat Mohi Mita Sandev. That Ram, you take the Dhanush, the bow of Vishnu, and you pull the string, and so that my doubt is removed. So he did not have to pull the string. On its own, the weapon came to Rama itself, the divine weapon. So the marriage is over, and finally, so birth and marriage. We have reached the end of Balkand, I think 1 hour, 15 minutes. So there are stories and within stories, and the journey moves forward. Now each verse you can interpret in multiple ways. You talk to different saints, they have different interpretations. So basically it's Hari Ananta, Hari Katha Ananta. And usually they say it's because of the Kalpa Bhed that there have been several Ramayanas over different periods, because in Hinduism there is a belief in cyclical time. The time is cyclical. It's not linear. So you have Satyug, Treta Yuga, Dwapar Yuga and Kali Yuga. Now Rama came into incarnation during Treta Yuga. Satyug, there was no need for God to come because they were only saints. Treta had the advent of demons, so Lord had to come. Followed by Dwapar, where Krishna came, Krishna appeared as incarnation. And then Kali Yuga, the birth of saints like Tulsi. So after Kali Yuga, then again you go back to Dwapar, then from ये तुम्हारा Dwapar, then there will be Treta, and there will be Satyug. So like Swami Yukteswarji says that he has calculated that we are already moving into Dwapar. So this is cycle. Now each period is 432,000 years of period. So if there have been millions of years, so there have been multiple these cycles of time. So different cycles. You have Ram comes, takes care of the evil, establishes dharma, then Krishna comes, takes care of evil, and so on. So this is called the Kalpa Bhed. That in different kalpas, different periods of time, there is incarnation of God, and hence the story is different. Like Lord Krishna was asked after the Mahabharata was over by Arjuna that can you retell Bhagavad Gita? So Krishna said, I cannot, because that time when I narrated you, I gave you the Gita, I was in a higher plane, higher orbit. Now I can't. So even the Leela differs depending on the period in which the incarnation is taking place. So this is the end of the first chapter, Balkand, which I think is the largest chapter. Now next Saturday we move on to Ayodhya Kand. So Ayodhya Kand basically completes the half of Ramayana. Okay, there are any questions?
Balkand, D or T? Balkand.
D.
T.
Balaka and Da.
D for Delta.
D-A.
Now Kand basically in Sanskrit means, I'll make the drawing. This is a sugar cane. Now, this is a node, another node. So space between two nodes is Kant. So there are 7 Kants, starting with the first one. So first 1 and 2, in terms of the size, the volume, take care of the half of Ramayana. So today we have completed a quarter, but only a glimpse. I think we've kind of
Incredibly interesting. I had some not necessarily philosophical questions, just something. So at the very end there, you were talking about can Ram string the bow of Vishnu? Who had that bow?
Parashuram.
So how did he have that? Because he's the follower of Shiva. No?
Parashuram was also an incarnation of Vishnu.
Oh.
Parashuram Ram is believed to be the 7th incarnation. Parashuram is one of the 7 incarnations of Lord Vishnu.
But there at the choosing of the groom, this is Parashuram is the devotee of Shiva that was so angry, no?
Devotee of Shiva, and he came after the marriage ceremony is over.
And he was angry about the.
He was angry because he heard the massive sound.
Achha.
When the Shiva's bow was broken, he came and he says that who has done this great blunder? And they say that look, we have done nothing. It was done by Sita's dad. Sita's father had this bow and he had this bow. So they did nothing. Ram said that I merely touched it.
So then, I mean, again, this is all on spiritual planes, but then if this means that Ram and Parashuram are talking to each other, 2 incarnations of Vishnu at the same time.
Yes. And why was this bow taken by Janak? Because this bow used to be kept in the palace, and Sita, when she was quite young, that while looking at various things and out of curiosity, so she moved the bow, which was supposed to be unmovable. It was like maybe impossible to move. So that time Janak said that look, my daughter has so much strength, miraculous power. Her husband has to be someone who has more strength.
Okay, so then, sorry, I also didn't understand. These are little details. I mean, the big thing is just incredibly interesting. I can see how you could spend your life studying. I mean, really interesting. It's like you could study the
Even I didn't know what Ramayana means. Like today I got to know what Ramayana. So journey of Ram. I didn't know that despite hearing about it ever since.
I also didn't know that.
Ramayana.
So when Ram steps out of the house and he steps on the first stone, and that stone turns into a woman, tell me the meaning of that again?
No, actually, there was a rishi called Gautam, and he had a very charming wife called Ahilya. And once Indra is one of the famous gods. Indra was so enamored of the beauty and charm of Ahilya that he came disguised as a prince and he seduced her. When the rishi came to know, it was again kind of divine play, and when the rishi came to know that Ahilya had fallen for Indra, he kind of cursed her. That because of this sin, you become a piece of stone. And but then he realized that it was none of her fault it was Indra who kind of created the conditions like that. So he then relented and he said that when Lord Ram comes, he is going to liberate you. So sometimes your curse becomes a boon itself. Otherwise, she was not destined to meet Ram, but the meeting was arranged this way. Like Dashrath was issueless, he had no sons. And while going on a hunting expedition, he heard a voice coming and he could shoot without looking at the object, but hearing the sound, and he shot. And a boy named Shravan was carrying his blind parents on a pilgrimage. And then the blind father, he cursed him. He said that you've killed our son. Now we are going to die of his grief. You will have a similar situation, that you will also die of the separation, pain of separation of your son. So at that time, Dashrath had no children. So Dashrath was actually happy. He said, okay, let me die. I will die, but first let me have some children first. And the kind of son he wanted, and Lord himself came. So there is a boon, but boon is a bane and bane is a boon. So because Dashrath was himself a very dharmic person, this curse became a boon for him.
It's so interesting how Vishnu just came as an incarnation like that and said, you must become small and you must cry. And so then really there was no birth. There was no birth. No woman's birth.
No normal birth.
Yeah.
But he manifests himself. God manifests himself.
So many of these stories are, not a natural birth, of course, when God incarnates. When you think of...
But again, these stories are not important. It is the message behind that it shows the power of love and devotion. That ultimately, Tulsi says that what does Ram want? Ramai keval prem pyara. That Ram wants only love and devotion from his devotees, nothing else. Not even a leaf or,
That itself is very interesting. Because just walking through the park, everybody's chanting Sri Ram, Jai Ram. I guess you also hear Hari Om, but
with devotion. Chanting with devotion, I think that's the...
But Ram said it doesn't have to be devotion, didn't he? Isn't that kind of what... I agree. I would think we all need to be chanting only with devotion. But what I was trying to understand from you was he was saying, everybody, just as long as you say my name, it's okay. So I think that's good for the masses, but I don't think it's true for self-transformation, right? He can say that and it appeals to everybody because there's no effort involved.
Because, Tulsi is dealing with the masses, mostly illiterate, semi-literate. People have no time. So they said no ritual. And that time, the effort was to make sure that we don't get lost in rituals. Because the birth of Buddhism and Jainism happened because Hinduism became too ritualistic. And people wrongly say that Buddhism and Buddha was anti-Veda or Mahavir was anti-Veda. No. They were against the rituals. Karma card. That we created millions of ceremonies. If you do this will happen. Take out this belt, this is leather. You can't go inside, this is leather, and you have to worship this way. Basically, all this is fine. That you need some certain external purity, certain external purity is needed. I mean, you should not get inside even your own house with dirty sandals or dirty shoes or dirty clothes. But external purity should not be everything.
And then you don't have to go through a priest to connect with God.
Yes. No intermediary, and external purity and external appearance is only symbolic. That's why is of limited use. That's why they say that Hanumanji, that Lord will be helped by the Vanarasena, the monkey army, and the bear army, the reach and Vanar and so on. They were not very kind of. Okay.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I apologize that we didn't have more people here today. I mean, it was a busy week. It was, and maybe something with Shiva Ratri last night had something to do with it. Maybe everybody stayed up all night. I don't know.
Doesn't matter.
But we are so grateful.
No, I said 5 people is the quorum, so we were actually 5.
So I think next week we'll have more of a quorum, but
no, normally
on our side, thank you so much.
No, normally I can do it myself also. So alone is so it doesn't matter.
It's so beautiful.
It allows me to kind of rehearse and prepare a little bit and do little more.
And feel Tulsi Das's presence. So I've been to, is it this Tulsi Ghat in Varanasi? And you can go and you've been there obviously. So they have this little sandalwood thing, and they have a boat, and they have you've seen.
No, I have not been to Banaras.
You've never been to Banaras?
No, never been to Banaras or Ayodhya or any of the places Chitrakoot.
I was going to ask you what you thought of this Tulsi temple. Like supposedly he lived there at the end of his life, and there's these things from him, and it has a power because I think there's devotion there. People go there. It's not so, people don't see it so easily. But we stay at Asighat, which is right next to Tulsi Ghat. So we've been there and we've meditated there. But it's a little chaotic and crazy. It's not easy to sit and meditate. And you can't get into the actual room they say was his room. But there's all these little implements, like this was his sandalwood thing.
I usually don't go on pilgrimage. I've been to Rameshwaram, that is south, and usually I'm happy, with my own little thing. And but I've been to Haridwar and Rishikesh and those places. Banaras, I have to go. We'll plan and we'll go sometime.
But it was mostly I wanted to see whether you thought it was genuine, because when I was there I was wondering, you just kind of wonder if they just set this up and said this was his, or if you had any feeling about that. Have you been in?
आ गए क्या? आज. But it is genuine. The names are genuine because I believe that you will not name places based on the characters of a novel. If Ramayana was simply one novel, you will not say that I will name this city as Ayodhya or another place as Chitrakoot. So since you can trace these places, it shows that these have historically existed. Now the story has been embellished to a great extent. Like when you say that goddess Parvati, she did penance for millions of years, or thousands of years, or hundreds of thousands of years. So that is the way of the poet to describe it. Means there is no beginning, no end. Maybe he must have prayed for few years, several months, whatever. But the basic historicity is there.
No, I got it. Great, thank you. Well, God bless you. Thank you for coming. I'm just going to turn this off real quick. And